Hey everybody, welcome to episode 34 of the Half Price Concessions podcast featuring Doc Love. One of the things we've been doing on the last couple of episodes that I've always tried to put in the intro and also in the last part of the episode you hear before we sign off is if you have suggestions or ideas or comments of people you want to have interviewed on the show or just things you want us to talk about, there's a lot of different ways to get in touch with us. Our email is halfpriceconcessionspodcast@gmail.com. You can reach out to us on Twitter at HPC Podcast, our Facebook page as well, the Half Price Concessions Podcast. If you have suggestions, get them to us. And as long as it's not some terrorist leader or some crazy person that we just can't get a hold of or somebody that just doesn't want to do a podcast interview, we'll at least give it an effort. Today's show is a result of that effort from one of our listeners, Boo Carlisle, reached out to us on Twitter and asked if we would go and interview Mr. Doc Love. And Doc's not a terrorist. He's not a terrorist leader. He's not inaccessible. We were able to go get him, and that's why he's on today's show. I remember Doc Love when I had gotten back into racing in 2008. Doc was one of the hottest announcers going. His production team, Victory Lane Productions, was doing a lot of different races. He employed people like Alan Dietz, who was the longtime voice of the Pro All-Star Series Super Late Models and now does work at Lakeview Motor Speedway. He had Tony Stevens back when he was trackside Tony Stevens before he became the voice of the Cars Tour and Pit Road TV and all that stuff. But Doc Love is somebody that in this area of the country, as far as late models go, a lot of people still remember what he used to do as far as announcing goes. He's still involved in the sport, doing podcasts and working for Race22.com, but just one of the genuine good guys in asphalt racing. I love every time I get to see Doc at a racetrack, whether we're in the pits, pit reporting, or if we're in the stands, whatever it may be. Just an all-around good guy. And thankfully, he lives close enough to me where I was able to go get an in-person interview with him one day after work. So sit back and relax. This episode's just a backyard conversation. We didn't write no script. I didn't have any hard-hitting 60-minute questions for him. This is just a good old boy backyard conversation with my good buddy, Mr. Doc Love. That's coming up on the other side of this break here on the Half Price Concessions Podcast. Hey guys, have you heard about Anchor? Well, you should. It's the easiest way to make a podcast. First and foremost, it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your cell phone or your computer. Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you. It takes all the work out of it. Your podcast can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Just download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. This episode of the Half Price Concessions Podcast is brought to you with support from Performance Center Racing Warehouse. In addition to being the home of the PRW chassis, Performance Center offers in-house setups and consulting, plus suspension and chassis pull-down analysis, along with their fabrication shop that can re-clip your race car with the fastest turnaround in the industry. Give Roger Johnson and the Performance Center team the chance to earn your racing business by calling them today at 704-838-1400 or visit them online at performancecenter.com. That's PERFORMANCENTER.com.
Back home, I'm a household name.
Well, Doc Love here on the Half Price Concessions Podcast, as special requested by Mr. Boo Carlisle. So now Boo knows he can reach out to us on Twitter and make a suggestion, and as long as it's not a terrorist or the leader of a terrorist regime, I'll probably go and interview him. But I probably could have had this microphone on for the last couple hours, man. We've been just sitting there telling stories and stuff, but it's just good to see you, man. I feel like I ain't seen you. I ain't seen you since March.
I know.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. Of course, you were working up in the tower doing your thing. As soon as I walked in, I heard that booming voice, and I was so glad to hear it. Versus Tony? No, I'm just kidding.
No.
But it was so glad to hear you doing your thing, and you did a fantastic job as always. But didn't get to see you, but it was a pleasure to get to hear you. But yeah, I can't believe I can't believe how long it's been since we've been able to sit down and talk.
I'm about to say it's.
We're always working.
I know. And then now that I don't do the pit reporting, I don't get to run by you at 20 miles an hour while I'm trying to run up pit road and keep my britches from falling down with the radio. But I'm glad I got to see it at tracks again, because it seemed like for a while I didn't see it at tracks for a while. So
yeah,
it's been good to have you back where I like seeing you.
Yeah, it is. It's good to be back. I never thought that I would get back to doing the short track stuff again. I thought once I walked away, that was it. Yeah, I'm done. Out of sight, out of mind. I thought nobody cared about where Doc Lowe is or where he's at. When you step away from doing things like that, it's out of sight, out of mind. A new group comes in for the most part.
Some of which you trained up, old Tony Stevens.
Oh, I've kept up with him. He checked on me. He saw that I was having some health issues, and he checked in for me from time to time, and I sure did appreciate that. And but yeah, stepped away, and he bought the rights to all of the Victor Lane productions and all the equipment, and took what we did, between he and Alan, what we did with audio, with the broadcast and the shows, and added his knowledge. My son's here, Daniel.
Testing out a head mount over here to our right.
Yeah. Oh boy, this boy here, he's going to be something else. He's got ideas, unbelievable.
I was about to say, now you're not alone down there. You got old compadre here to keep you company on pit road. Yeah, we've been doing the videos, which is a whole new aspect from coming back. I'm old school, just old school radio. Yeah.
That's a lost art, with all these phones now. You could take your phone and watch videos at the racetrack now, depending on the coverage. You can almost have an app to listen to the races on the radio. I think there's a possible market for that, maybe. That's a lost art.
Yeah.
Everybody has to have video. It has to have video. I think there's still a market out there somehow for just audio.
Well, look at how much the podcast thing has blown up. I mean, Apple Podcast there's a ton of them on there that are just audio. So, I mean, there's a market out there. Yeah,
because it is so convenient, and you can listen to it on your time.
Yeah.
You can listen to it a little bit here. Well, got to go to the store, pick it up where you left off. You can
fast forward through the commercials.
Exactly. Yeah, this podcast is brought to you by a Full Belly.
Yep.
Brought to you right here in Doc's grill area.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different world. In just 10 years, I stepped away for 10 years. I had to get a real job, grow up and get a real job. Thought that was what I needed to do to get my life back in order, and didn't work. But we're doing good, though. We're doing good. We got things in order now, and racing fell back in line. You never know how God works.
I was about to say, now people can hear you on you do your house calls where you get interviews that way, and with all the Race 22 stuff. So it's been kind of cool to hear you get back into it and stuff. Does that scratch the itch for you, getting to do that stuff?
Yeah, the podcasts are different. It's hard. It's people say I'm crazy because doing live, to me, it's easier. Doing podcasts to me is hard.
I completely agree.
Because live, it's like you have to be on your game. You have to be sharper. I don't know. There's just something about it that keeps me, more alive. I don't know. It's hard to explain. The interviews are just different. When you're live or broadcasting live, it's just a different aspect. I don't know if you know that your audience is there, or what it is mentally, or what it is. But doing a podcast, doing an interview, it just depends on who it is or how you got it set up. Sometimes it's hard to be that character, you know. I didn't get the nickname Doc Love until later in life. A lot of people don't know my real name. There's a lot of folks that don't.
I don't know your real name.
When I got married, she didn't know my real name until we went and got the marriage license. She turned around, she's like, I really don't know your full real name. Until we got the marriage license. So, and we laughed about that. So, in part, some of that, the character. I think maybe that's what it is too. It's hard to be in character when you're doing a podcast. Sometimes maybe. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. Doing the podcast. Watching these guys that are got tables set up, and it seems like everybody now with the downtime, everybody's at home. Everybody's got the phones pointed at them and walking around just doing some type of podcast without a purpose. I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe when you're live for a purpose.
You can't cut and redo on live. You
right.
gotta just roll with it.
Right. And when you're doing podcasts, it's sometimes when I do the house call, of course, is with a purpose. But it seems like everybody's doing a podcast without a purpose. Your podcast is with a purpose. Most of the if you're doing interviews, of course, is with a purpose. But it seems like everybody now with the downtime, they're just pointing the cameras at them or the phones at them and just walking around without a purpose. It's
not entertaining.
It's kind of odd, but we're in an odd time, here.
For sure.
So,
there's a ton of announcer stuff I'm gonna definitely get to you. But I've always kind of wondered. And you almost got into this before I turned the microphone on, so this is why I moved toward the equipment real quick. Was figuring out where you first kind of got your first hit at racing. I always kind of refer to being a race fan or anything. It's almost like a drug. Like you go back for hits and you get highs and sometimes you get lows, but it's something that just never fully gets out of you. So where was kind of that first hit for you?
I remember, as long as I can remember, just anything that resembled a race car would just make me wild. Just really, I would get excited as a kid, as a child. I remember going to Franklin County as a teen. That was just the ultimate, That was just the coolest. I remember going to With Raceway, the dirt track, when it was really hopping. That was always the coolest. But I remember as young youth, 8, 9 years old, seeing cars, race cars on an open trailer going through town, or just wherever, and just like, oh, race car, and just going nuts, that was just a big thrill. I just knew that was, anything race car. It's just always been in my mind,
Who was some of those first guys that you remember, like from your childhood? Like, were you in the Paul Radford days and all that stuff, or are we going a little bit earlier? We're going to show your age a little bit here.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, gosh, I don't remember names.
Okay.
When it goes back that far, but until, my teenage years. Gosh, I'm having a hard time with memories, with all this medication crap, with the health issues. But I just, it's just a fan of racing,
Didn't matter who it was.
It didn't matter who it was, really.
Okay. That's fair.
But way back in the, the sportsman days, Sam Ard, Tommy Ellis. I remember him when he won his first his sportsman championship before late models. Was a tough dude in the sportsman cars. Tommy Houston. Those cats. Those were some of the first memories of the drivers that really stood out. Watching the sportsman cars, when I got a chance to travel to those.
Yeah.
Those cars are Remember the old square bodies, Novas and stuff like that. You know, it's like, oh, that is the ultimate race car, you know.
Yeah.
Big old tires hanging out.
A lot different than our late model stocks, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Well, tell me when you got the announcing bug bit, because that's a whole different bug to go from being at the track as a fan to wanting to, hey, I'll put this microphone in my hand and
Never dreamed I would do that, and my path is probably different than most. I grew up in Pulaski, Virginia, graduated in 1985, and voted class clown of 1985. So naturally, I figured I'd be some type of entertainer. I just didn't know of what, but never dreamed I would do anything like that. You know, never thought I'd be ballsy enough to stand in front of a crowd and entertain. But my path of announcing races actually started through RC racing.
okay.
Announcing RC races at King, North Carolina. And I was introduced to RC racing through when I was in the Air Force. And I was drinking heavily. Heavily. Couldn't afford to do both.
I'm about to say, you were...
And I was at a point where I could not afford to do both. And Ron Forster, Air Force buddy of mine, who is now in Seattle. He was from the West Coast. He's in Seattle. Still working on airplanes. Still keep in touch with him. He kept talking about, man, you ought to go with me to go watch RC racing. I thought, I'll go watch a bunch of kids and one grown man play with toy cars. What the crap? So finally, I didn't have enough money to go drinking and partying with my other buddies, so I went with him. And I thought, holy moly, this is cool.
Yeah.
So, you know, I ended up getting into RC racing and really enjoyed it. Spent a lot of money, and it got me away from drinking. So, and then when I got out of the military, I was kind of afraid to, you know, continue spending money because I didn't know, you know, career path, you know, where I was going to end up job-wise. But I wanted to still be around it. So Chris Smith, the owner, you know, he was working at King RC, and they owned King Super Speedway, which we used to come up here and race. And when I raced RC cars up here at big races, you know, we'd have 300 or 400 people that come to King Super Speedway. King Super Speedway was the ultimate in super speedway racing for RC cars.
I would never imagine that many people at an RC race.
Oh, it was incredible. That place was a concrete, like 310 center line. So it was super speedway for those cars.
Yeah.
And we'd have big national races, and that many people would come.
They pay money?
And no,
just racing for the trophy.
Yep. For pride and the fact that you were the best at King Super Speedway. It was one of those most perfect. You know, it was a perfect concrete track.
Yeah.
And it was just a super cool place. But I would be in the pits entertaining and telling stories and carrying on and just being silly. And Chris used to say, "Daggum, son, people paying more attention to you than the announcer." And sometimes the announcer would be kind of dry, and you know, car number 1's first, car number 2's second. So
Yeah.
I, you know, had my ideas. Well, if I did it, I would do it this way. And everybody thinks they can do better. So I always wanted to still be around RC racing. So Chris, you know, he said, "Hey, man, well, you ought to announce some of these races." So he taught me what needed to be done, you know, for the races, what the racers needed to hear. So I added my twist to it.
Yeah.
And so I imitated MRN.
Like Barney Hall and all those guys. Yeah,
exactly. So, and then one thing I did that I never heard before is I acknowledged like the guys' girlfriends or the wives. Yeah, appreciate y'all coming out. So, you know, thank y'all for coming and supporting. You know, hey, you know, and just started ad-libbing and all this other stuff, and it took off. Next thing you know, I'm getting calls. Hey, how about coming down to South Carolina doing this race? How about coming up to Virginia doing this race? And I'm making some money.
Hey.
So I started listening more to MRN and doing this other stuff and trying to figure out, I want to interview somebody, you know, do something a little extra, do something different.
Yeah.
At RC races and do something, you know, that other people ain't doing, you know.
Yeah.
So next thing you know, somebody asked me, "Well, what radio station you work at?" I ain't never worked at a radio station. So
I work at me radio station.
so one thing led to another, and then got opportunity to do that. So, and then I started thinking, well, maybe I ought to try some racing stuff. So
Yeah.
I started just going to tracks, and I met Ken. I can't think of his last name. His name's
Well, we know his first name's Ken.
oh gosh, he announced at Hickory before in the mid '90s. Ken, I can't think of his name. Oh gosh.
So he was the announcer at Hickory.
Oh goodness! But anyway, I met him. He bounced around a little bit, so I'd shadow him and just met people, and just would go to different races and listen to announcers and bounce around and just absorb how they did it. And Tim Southers at Hickory, Ken was leaving at Hickory and needed an announcer, so I sent him a tape, and lo and behold, I got the job at Hickory in 1999, being a track announcer.
Wow.
So I applied what I learned doing RC races for a long time. I did RC races because I got out of the military in '93, and I did RC races from '94 to about '97.
A couple of years there to cut your teeth.
Yep, and really fine-tuned, traveled all over the country.
Yeah.
Doing certain events and emceeing all kinds of RC stuff and making a name that way. And I just thought I'd try it, and went to Hickory, and it just, I don't know, I just fell in love with it.
I'm about to say, you're the only guy I know that's come from RC. I've heard of guys coming from BMX racing,
Yeah.
from iRacing, from go-karts, but you're the first one from RC. So
Yeah.
that's you're starting to complete my color wheel a little bit here. But I always remember you, and I think probably a lot of people always remember you from when you got to do a lot of the UARA stuff. That's where I remember hearing you for the first time at A Speedway. Talk about, when did that come about, and what was that like for you?
Oh man, that
was a hot tour going.
Oh yeah, Wink and Carrie, such wonderful, beautiful people. My buddy Alan was announcing for him, and he was leaving the series to go with the super late models more full time, and doing a lot more work with them. And he called me. He said, "Hey, look," he said, "if I could handpick anybody," he said, "I'd like for you to do it." He said, I spoke with them, and they are allowed me to put in a lot of input in. And he said, if you call them, he said, I think you'll be a good shot to get it.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. I was blown away. So I thanked Alan for that. That was really cool. And I was really, starting the Victory Lane Productions at that time. And I'd started Victory Lane Productions to do RC races. We were doing productions on RC racing, which nobody had ever done before.
Yeah, I can't imagine anybody doing that.
And now it's a huge thing. People doing the video and national events and all that stuff. These kids with these laptops just blew me away. So
yeah.
So I said, well, let me move up here to big car races. So we were starting that, and Al and I were doing some races and starting to spread our wings there. And so he was moving over to the other series, and I met with Carrie and Wink, and we agreed, and they said they felt comfortable, and I just loved that series. The drivers that came through there, I mean,
there's a lot of talent.
That was some
series.
Good racing. I mean, the only thing I can compare that to is the Cars Tour Late Models. I mean, that is very mirrored, in my opinion, but that was some good racing.
Yeah.
The tracks they went to, the things that we got to see them do, go to Bristol, and my bucket list that I got to announce. I got to announce them at Bristol, up in the booth, and I mean, that was a thrill. You talking about being nervous?
That had to be a long elevator ride.
There was a walk. We had to walk
never
around
mind.
the back.
Good grief, man.
Yeah, we walked. We had to park way on the outer part, for all the cars, and then we had to march, up through the side and walk around to the back side and walk up the steps on the back. I can't remember if we rode up some on the elevators. I can't remember.
I hope you got to ride some elevator.
But we got up there. We raced after the Busch Series, and at the time I was thinking like, it ain't gonna be no big deal. Everybody leave after the Busch race. I'll be all right. I won't be nervous. And then got up there, and everybody stayed. I was like, oh crap!
I better.
Like, oh crap!
Step my game up here.
So I got a little nervous. And I looked down. I was up in that little booth. I looked down. All them people down there. I was like, oh my Lord! All these people be listening to me. They don't know who these people are. So I had a pretty good game plan to explain, a little bit, and then do. I think Bob Dillner was doing Victory Lane for us, so I remember throwing it down to him, and things like that. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm announcing at Bristol. Holy crap, on the PA.
What was the bigger one, Bristol? Or when you got to go do Rockingham? Because Rockingham looked like a pretty cool one, too.
Well, that was just, we weren't on the PA there, but to do a broadcast from Rockingham, that was a thrill.
Yeah.
That was a thrill. Doing that for Andy, that was a thrill. That was huge. Getting to do that broadcast with the UARA representing them, and then what was it? Street Stocks.
It was like it wasn't. I don't know if it was the Mass. They had a different name. They had a lot of street stocks. I think they had way more street stocks than y'all had late models.
They had the street stocks, and was that the class where they were wanting to start like 70 of them?
I think it was.
Oh,
I
man.
remember seeing that on race 22.
That was entertaining.
I bet. Yeah.
And watching Alan, we had Brad. Oh gosh, my memory is so bad.
I think Brandon Ward was up
Brandon
there with
Ward.
you.
Brandon
Yeah.
Ward. That's what I was trying to think of. Brandon Ward sat in with us, did a great job with us, and I think the Pro Cup was there.
Yeah.
After they had Benny Gordon was there racing. I remember. But it was so thrilling to see the Rockingham open back up when they had the oh gosh, my memory's bad. Do you edit these?
Huh?
Do you edit any of these at all?
No, they come out as raw and clean as they can.
Oh man,
but that's okay.
My memory's bad.
I'm just jealous you got to do Bristol and Rockingham. Biggest one I've gotten to do is Martinsville, so you got definitely some legs up on me on that one. Am I not mistaken? Did you do stuff with Pro Cup for a while?
Yeah.
Back before they switched over to Car Store when it was still.
Yeah, I met. Of course, I knew Gene Crane from RC Racing.
Yeah.
We were RC buddies, and they were putting together an internet broadcast, and Tim, went there from Hickory, and they brainstormed internet broadcasting and wanted a pit reporter. So I tried out for that and got that. So I was only at Hickory 1 year, and my plan was to be at Hickory for 20 years.
Yeah.
And the guy that came to Hickory, that ended up being at 20 years, we were going to do it together. Never met him before, but Steve came from the Globetrotters. He had traveled with them, and he had announced he stayed there for 20 years and did a phenomenal job. And I'm so jealous that he, that would have been awesome if both of us could have been there for 20 years together announced.
Yeah.
What a team, because I really enjoyed. We had a good time that 1 year that I got to be there. So I'm glad that he was able to stay there for 20-some years and announce. He did a wonderful job at Hickory. But yeah, I decided to that my passion was more of the broadcasting, and did the pit road and for their internet broadcasting, and Gene Crane, and then we had the guest, work with him from time to time, and did live pit road, and I loved it. I hustled, boy. That was some fun.
Getting running around like a crazy person.
Yeah, and got to go a lot of different tracks that I didn't think I'd ever get to do. Go down to Georgia, go down to Boo's country. Yeah. I'm gonna get Boo back. I'm gonna get him Boo back. Trust me. You got one coming, Boo.
What's the furthest you went?
With them,
or just anything in general? What's the furthest you went to go to a race?
Eldora. Yeah. Tony and I was doing a lot of dirt stuff. We did the fast track event at Eldora, and that was a cool one off the bucket list. At that point, when we were doing a lot of broadcasts, really tried not to be overwhelmed at certain events. Like, oh, looky what we get to do. Yeah. But it was hard not to do that at Eldora. That was the cool one. That was a good one out of the bucket list. I was thrilled to do that. I was proud of that one. And one of the funniest sound bites that I really like is one of the big sponsors was coming in to kind of overview what we were doing.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to see how we were doing the broadcast. And Stan Lester was a little nervous, because be on your best behavior, be this, do that, blah, blah, blah. So I said, I will, I promise. So the gentleman came in and was overlooking. He patted us on the back, and I said, here, I had an extra headset, but here, put this on, join us, we'll do a little impromptu interview or whatever. So and Stan, he don't know what I'm gonna say half the time. So he just
you don't know what you're gonna say half the time.
He didn't want me to do anything to embarrass him or anything,
Yeah.
And Stan's a good guy. I loved him. I really like, we were talking about earlier. Really liked him. I really liked working for Stan. Kind of wished I'd have been able to work out to stay with him a whole lot longer, but things didn't work out. I had to move along. But Stan's a good guy. We had a situation where I think it was Davenport was leading and fell off the pace, and the gentleman was on, I forget his name, but he was a really classy guy. He pointed over there, and I said, Davenport or somebody, whoever, well, I think it was Jonathan Davenport, was leading, and he fell off the lead. And I said, look at there, he fell off the lead. He was leading or what have you. And I said, he's coming off a turn 4 looking like a blue hair, looking for the exit or something like that, I said. And he got tickled. I mean, he got just genuinely tickled, and you could hear him laugh on the broadcast. And to me, that is one of the funniest sound bites because he was so genuine and laughing. And Stan was like, "Oh my God, what did you do?"
Like, I made him laugh.
I said, "Yeah, I made him have a good time." So he's like, "Yeah, good job."
I think that's a good synopsis of the part of your style that I always heard and always liked, is that you did insert some humor. It wasn't just calling the race and calling who was in the lead and who was in second. You had to inject your personality in it just to make it stand out, so it wasn't so mundane.
Yeah, that's a lot. I always try to make it fun. I don't know. I used to listen to a lot of comedians' albums and 8 tracks. Shows my age.
Yeah, it really does. Spend some 33s.
Yeah, and just remember those. I used to love to listen to humor tapes, and I guess on how they would insert little humor tidbits along the way, and sometimes it's not how or what's said, it's delivery.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just, from working in radio and always have headsets on, I just listen to its speech patterns. And sometimes it's how you say it, Sometimes it's not what's said, it's how you say it, in the delivery and timing, So I just, sometimes it's how you work a crowd,
Yeah.
So it's an art, when I watch and study people, sometimes I'll try to emulate that, So it's an art. I think you do a great job yourself, and and you don't be so hard on yourself. It's tough. You got to be sharp. My mind. I have a hard time with memory here lately. I blame the medication. I'm on so much medication with all this crap with my feet that I have to deal with, and from having so much fun years ago,
paying for it now.
But yeah, it's not something. And one thing I will say about stuff like that, it's not something that you can just show up and turn the mic on.
Yeah.
And you can tell when I go and visit places, you can tell when that's the case, and that's frustrating.
Yeah.
If I'm a new fan, when I go somewhere, I want to know what is this guy? Who is that? Well, tell me, teach me, learn me, educate me. So when I work a crowd like that, sometimes I keep that in the back of my mind. Every time I turn the mic on, somebody needs to know,
Yeah.
So, you gotta, you can't work a crowd like they're all brand new, because you're gonna turn the old ones off. It's like when I remember that from Hickory. I get phone calls. Probably when you work today, it's the same thing.
Oh, I got nasty phone calls.
You get them phone calls, yeah. Why you always doing this? Won't you just quit this and just start the race?
Tell that announcer to shut up. I heard that message so many times.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it used to hurt my feelings.
Yeah, you gotta be thick-skinned. It's tough. I don't care how long you do it. It's tough.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to hear that.
You got to tell me about finding your protege, old Mr. Anthony Stevens, old Tony Stevens from the Cars Tour. Because you told a real good story before I turned the microphone on about when you knew that he was going to be your guy, old Trackside Tony, before he turned into Mr. Cars Tour Tony Stevens.
Oh,
you got to share that story.
I love Tony. People give him a hard time. I'm going to tell you, I love Tony. He is a hard-working dude, and he is really gifted at his craft. When Alan Dietz, that's another guy that I just absolutely love and appreciate the things that we did together. When we were doing the races, doing the internet broadcasting with Victor Lane Productions, we were doing the past races, and I think it was the Easter Bunny at Hickory, and we had tried a few folks. We were trying out some pit reporters, and some of them just wasn't cutting it, and we had high hopes for a few, and just wasn't cutting it. And we were just looking for that it, but we really wasn't sure what the it was. It just hadn't hit me yet, So I'd backed off and let Alan be the voice of my company. And that's when I realized that's when we took off for Victor Lane Production. I cannot announce and produce and put out a good product. So I backed out and let Alan do his thing, because I just loved Alan, his voice, his prep, his work. Let him be the voice of my company. And that's when we took off. I mean, we just took off, because I close my eyes and I want to take all these different noises and all these different aspects of racing and bring it to people, not just an announcer telling you who's in what position. So, and we wanted to incorporate a good pit reporter. So we were setting up Jeff Day, Precision Spindles, and was a huge supporter of Doc Love and Victor Lane Productions back in the day. Suggested him, and I didn't really know who he was. He said, well, he works at a parts store. Everybody knows him.
Yeah.
So, and
pretty young at that time, wasn't he?
He was young.
In his
he
20s?
Was really young and bouncing around.
He still does that?
So I was in the tower setting up, and Alan and a few other guys were talking. They were all comfortable. I'm sweating, setting all the equipment up. I'm in the floor all sprawled out, and it's 140 degrees, feels like. I looked up, and they're all, buttoned up, all looking pretty, not a drop of sweat on them. And Tony come bebopping up, "Hey, boys, how you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, God, here we go." I'm the only one, sweating, carrying on. I said, "Good Lord, boys, is it fat out here or is it just me?" so we, I get everything, I'm real particular. I don't touch anything. I'm the one, I got to set it up myself, like Tony is now. And you work for Tony's. You know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly I think he got it from you. I blame you for all the reason it takes 8 hours to tear down equipment. That's a little inside baseball, though.
So we get going, and, he does, pretty good on the open, and I'm like, whatever. So the race gets going, and Kyle Grissom gets out in the lead. And all of a sudden, within the first 20 laps or something like that, he just starts taking off. So all of a sudden, he drops off the lead. So I radio Tony and says, "Oh, leader's off the pace, coming to you." So he said, "All right," he said, "I'm ready." So I look at Alan, he's looking at me, and he lets me know he's getting ready to send it down to him. I said, "All right, Alan's going to be coming to you. Be ready." So I said, "Alan's coming to you in 3, 2, 1. So he takes it from Alan right on time. I said, "Okay." He did that good. So he takes it from Alan. He starts giving a report, and he's giving these details. All right, what's going on here is on the carburetor is this little knock nut is what happened. All right, here's what happened, folks. This little 5% piece is falling off his carburetor, and blah, 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 and all these details. And we're both, Alan and I are up on the window looking like, where is he at? How's he getting all this detail? And we see him. He is in the engine bay with the crew members giving the report. So he's
leaned in with them.
He is up in the engine with the crew guys giving the report. So
he's lucky he didn't get elbowed in the face. Like, get out of here, man. We're trying to work.
But at that point, we said, "That's our guy."
Yep.
That is our guy. I said, "That is our guy," and that was history after that.
Wow.
And Tony worked his butt off. He never disappointed. I don't know if we just had a shooting here.
I don't know. It sounds like some gunshots.
We are
here.
in a gated community.
Yeah, we're also in Winston-Salem.
But Tony, man, that was incredible. That was, we were high-fiving, and I was thrilled after that. So everywhere we did a broadcast, whether it was on dirt, we, speaking of Stan Lester, as we did earlier, we did a race for him with Raceway.
Yep, rural retreat up in God's country.
Oh, I love that. Mr. Brown and his wife. There's the neighborhood cat. Mr. Brown, he and his wife, they're good people. Loved working the track up there and just visiting. That's a wonderful place.
Yeah.
But we did a fast track race there before we actually started working with them. And it was a situation on the front stretch. And see, most dirt tracks, they don't have a pit reporter. So the crowd was like, "Wow, this is cool, They can hear what's going on in the pits." And there was a wreck right there close to where Tony was. I said, "Tony, go out there and interview that cat." And there he goes, right on the track. And Stan Lester said, "What the hell is he doing?" I said, "I told him to." I said, "I'll take the blame." So Stan said, "Oh, that was pretty cool." Interviewed him right there on the track.
You can't beat that.
Stan thought it was pretty cool, and he said, "Man, that's different. That's cool." But the race director didn't think it was.
No, I'm sure he had a fit about it.
Yeah, he had a fit, and rightfully so, But I took the blame.
Right.
And that's where Tony got, I'll take the blame. Ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Oh.
That's what.
That explains why Tony had me run out on the racetrack at last year's Old North State Nationals and get fussed and cussed at by Jack McNelly because I ran on a racetrack under caution.
Yeah.
Now I know who to blame.
Yep.
Dr. Love.
He'll take the blame for it. Yep. He'll stand up and take the blame for it. Yep. I used to do the same thing.
Oh, it all trickles down.
Yep.
Now the next time I see you at a racetrack, I'm just going to come blame you. But real quick before we wrap up, with all the experience you've had and everything you've gotten to do, and you're a student of the game and whatnot, what is, in a nutshell, if a young person was starting to kind of do this kind of thing, announcing races at their local track or whatever they're doing, what would you say is probably the best advice you could give them?
Don't be afraid to try. But if somebody is really wanting to try this, gosh, man, I don't know. It's just
No, that's a tough one.
Just shadow somebody. Find somewhere where you can get some mic experience, but do your homework. Do your homework. Don't just turn on the mic and start talking. Do your homework. Know the product. Don't ever take a mic and not know the product. The product being the track, the series, the drivers. Do the homework. And I'm not always perfect and and know everything. I'm just as guilty as anybody, but do the homework.
Yeah.
Do the homework. Never turn a mic on without doing your homework. Shadow somebody. Always ask to shadow somebody. See what it's about. I don't know. That's
It's a pretty deep pool to swim in.
yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah, there's so many aspects,
Probably a good one, pretty good one to end on, brother. I appreciate you.
Well, I kind of just babbled on. I don't know if I made any sense.
You made plenty of sense.
I think if nothing else, everybody knows I don't have any memory now.
Well, hey, I've always got memories of you, so I'm sure a lot of people
appreciate
do
you.
too.
I listen to your podcast. I think you do a great job. I think I really enjoy your work, and I've enjoyed seeing you grow into a good announcer. I think you've worked hard at it.
Took a while.
I think I think you get it. I think because you worked hard at it, and I'll be the first one to pat you on the back because I don't think you give yourself enough credit.
Nah, I don't like giving myself credit.
Well,
my wife hates when I do that.
Well, I think you do a great job at what race was it, son, at Hickory last year? What race did you work at Hickory last year?
Was it the, I know I did the North-South Shootout with Derek Perniciglio. That was in November. And then I did another, I think I did a car store race there. Yeah, I did a car store. I had to fill in for Tony.
Yeah, that's what I'm
That was the
talking about.
March one. Yeah, it was the second race of the year. It was in March.
Okay.
And I had to fill in because
you did a real good job at that one.
I'm always Tony's fill-in.
Yeah.
I blame you again. He wouldn't be there if he wasn't for you. But
yeah, you do a real good job, and you should give yourself a little more credit.
Thank you for listening to yet another edition of the Half Price Concessions Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Overcast, Himalaya, Castro, whatever podcast app you're using. Please hit the subscribe button. If there's a section to leave us a rating and review, please leave us a good one. It would really help us out a ton. Also, if you're listening on our YouTube page, hit the subscribe button there. That way, you'll get notified every time we put out new episodes. Also, you can email the show. The email address is halfpricedconcessionspodcast@gmail.com. You can email us questions, concerns, ideas for future episodes, anything and everything. We'll definitely respond to it, and we just appreciate you listening. Also, If you have friends or family who want to listen but don't want to go to YouTube and don't have a podcast app, you can listen to every episode on our website. That's www.anchor.fm/HPC podcast. Thank you for listening. My name is Tyler Williams, and I hope that you have a great day.